The first longcase clocks by East, Fromenteal and their contemporaries, I don't think I'd call them beautiful, but they are functionally ideal for the job that they did at the time of showing off the movement of the, first of all, the short bob pendulum, and then later the full case with the long pendulum in. And it's only when we get to Tompion, and in particular Graham, that I think you can call a long case clock beautiful. And I think this is the most beautiful clock of all long case clocks in the world. Just the quality of the case, the design, the functionality, it not only does a job, but it does look beautiful at the same time. The caddy top here is unusual because it has 5 finials instead of the normal 3. You've got 2 at the back as well as the 2 here at the front and the central one. So that it certainly makes itself a presence with 5 finials. You can see right up to the top here you've got the Kingwood and into the oyster veneers here, actually on the very top of the caddy. 2 beautiful frets, which of course are ornamental because the clock does not strike. And then the half oysters around the window here. So you've then got the quarter columns at the back, the 3/4 on the front, and the plain Doric capitals and the Doric bases on the pillars, which have the emphasis tapering to make it look parallel. The lovely Kingwood columns with the emphasis in them, with simple Doric head and bases, nicely framed again with the oysters on the top and the bottom stiles. And the oysters here are made from the Kingwood, a branch, and then it's cut at an angle through the branch and then made into these like cheese slices, and you get these wonderful rosettes on the patterning from the oysters in the Kingwood itself. The trunk door itself is the center of the beauty of the case, with the half oysters at the top and base and these 3 beautiful ones in the middle. And here you've got this beautiful central oyster here, the full width of the case. So even the base of the trunk here has this lovely oyster in the middle with the 2 halves, and then the skirting, the double skirting with the oysters on it again. From the very bottom to the very top, it's absolute perfection. Every bit of it is veneered in the Kingwood, and it's a rich, beautiful wood for a beautiful clock. Quite simple hands, simple hour hand, the Monday, the day of the week, with the goddess of the moon and her astrological symbol, George Graham London, nice planted on silver disc, the shuttered winding hole, the calendar, and his signature at the bottom here. It's all understated and absolutely beautiful. So the lovely bold Monday with the picture of the goddess of the moon and her symbol, Diana the huntress with her hounds with her and her bow and arrow, and the lovely hour and minute hand. Beautiful details. The calendar aperture with the tiny little location holes, so you can more easily move the numbers backwards and forwards without damaging the surface. And the simple plaque George Graham London with the shuttered winding hole. So cocking the mechanism to open the shutter. This is a lovely winding key, and you can see it's got the ebony on the black side and the heartwood, the brown on there. I think it's the original winding key. It's certainly beautiful enough to have been so. And so that then, being a month-going clock, it winds anti-clockwise. And right at the bottom of the dial plate, you've got this lovely, flowing, simple signature, George Graham London. Understated, but beautiful. The whole thing blends together as a most lovely, beautiful piece of art. And this has one of George Graham's very first deadbeat escapements. He never claimed to have invented the deadbeat escapement, but he certainly was the first clockmaker to widely use it. The little escutcheon and the key to allow us to open and see the heavy bob pendulum, the single driving weight for the mechanism, and the engraved screw below the pendulum with a zero and the figures around so you can know how far to adjust it. In Graham's note to John Whiteside, he says that one division is a few seconds a day. So you can see how very little movement gives you quite a large change in the rate of the pendulum when you're looking for absolute accuracy. If ever I'm doing it, I always lower it, say 5 divisions, and then screw it back up 6 divisions to take out any backlash in the system. I like to think of it that this is the first of the deadbeat escapement clocks. May not be the first, but it's certainly one of the very, very earliest. So the mechanism in the clock is simpler than most in that it is a timepiece. It doesn't strike. And it's got this lovely soft tick from the deadbeat escapement. And it's an ideal clock to have in your bedroom because it doesn't strike. So Graham here has the great barrel with the great wheel engaging into the first wheel, the second wheel, the third wheel, and the escape wheel is the fourth wheel. And so he manages to get a month-going clock out of a 4-wheel train. This is because the pinions are smaller than normal, the teeth are finer, so you can have smaller pinions, and so that you can get a month-going train out of the 4 wheels. The back plate has the 6 pillars riveted on, and the front plate here is latched on all 6 of the pillars. Beautiful work, just perfection in gear cutting. And of course, by this stage, they weren't all filed out by hand. They did have gear cutting engines, which Hooke had first proposed to Tompion a generation previously. The deadbeat escapement itself, the actual pallets and the bow shape of them, they're on quite a long lever arm so that the small swing of the pendulum is amplified so that you can have a very, very small swing of the pendulum, which is more consistent from timekeeping point of view than a big swing, because a very small variation makes less of a time change than it does with a big swing. And so you can see that long arm coming down amplifies the normal movement of the pallets. you can see the two impulse faces on the pallets here and here, and so that it's only in the last little bit of the movement each second that the slipping of the escape wheel down those angles of the pallet gives the impulse to keep the pendulum swinging. So you can see it stops on the parallel portion of the pallet, and the pendulum then swings, and it's only when it gets the last little bit that it accelerates over the angled portion to give that impulse.